Hello, hello to my True Blue crew. Welcome to Whip Wednesday, our time to get progress done on those ongoing projects. The Works in Progress Wednesday check in. I am so glad you are here. So, as you come in, please put your name, location, and project in the comments, start the conversation, and we will dive right in. Early in the month, we get our clues for the various puzzle mystery quilts from Cotton Cuts, and I am so thankful to be a ambassador for Cotton Cuts, and I've been working on Flyway is the spring 2025 mystery. Hello, hello, Lori. How are you doing today? I chose this nice collection of neutrals to work with for the Odyssey project, Flyway. And I keep this color chart handy when I am putting together the clues because the instructions are all done in grayscale, and the letters and the placement of the light and dark on the instructions do not always match the light and dark fabric. Uh, so I make myself lots of notes because I was working on Wild West. The fall 2024 mystery was my very first puzzle mystery quilt with Cotton Cuts, and I got confused quite a bit. So I have learned my lesson, and I just make notes all over the place. So the first thing you always want to do is make sure you have all the parts. And folks that fall in love with Cotton Cuts generally are huge fans of these pre-cut pieces. And if you have an AccuQuilt, you can do this for any quilt that you make. But it is so much fun having these pre-cut pieces come in the mail from Cotton Cuts, and then you can just sit and sew the pieces. You know, there's none of that busy work cutting and trying to fuss with rotary cutters and things. Oh, Lori is saying that it's nice to know that professionals get confused. Oh, yes, quite a bit. I have a love-hate relationship with Jack, the seam ripper. But it's really funny because I will be in a class, I'll be teaching other quilters, and they make a mistake and I run right over. Oh, let me rip that out for you. It is so much easier to rip someone else's project than to sit and use the seam ripper on your own. But yes, I figure that, you know, there's no shame in making mistakes. We're all doing the best we can. Win some, lose some. Hello to Karen from Boise. Good to see you here. Okay, so we are doing a square in a square first. So I have this nice marbly looking tan fabric that's going to be the centers of my squares, and I only need 2 of them, which seems odd because they gave us 4. Oh well, we'll have extra fabric squares. Oh wait, those are different. Okay. Yeah, I don't see where that other tan is being used in this step, so I will set it aside. I want this fun geometric square print. And we are going to put these little dots on one side. It's so much fun mixing these big graphic designs together. And then on the other end, I am putting 2 of the larger dots. They look like Cheerios. If you had your Cheerios in chocolate milk in the morning, that might be that fabric. Okay, so sewing our square in a square units. We're going to put triangles on opposite sides of our square. And I think I described this last time we were together working on Flyway. I crease that center of my square, and then I crease and this one I want to fold the opposite direction so that it will lay right inside the crease. So I want the right sides out. I want to fold wrong sides together on that one. And that way, when I put the two fabrics right sides together, it makes a little, like they spoon together. And then I know that I can just put my pin right in the center there, and those pieces are lined up to sew. So this one I keep face up, fold in half, right sides together, crease. And then with the other one, I'm going to do wrong sides together and crease. Some people iron those creases in to find the centers. I would rather not, force it to that degree. There's still a little bit of, I don't want that crease to be permanent. And then these pieces were already cut with the corners trimmed off, so I can just aim for that corner point on my triangle, and that's my 1/4 inch seam. Little thread tab to use as a leader ender. Since we're only doing 2 units here. And then we'll go through the fold process again on the other side. I'm thinking ahead to when I will use my iron, but I'm going to need to reach across and grab my felt, or my wool pressing mat. It's not felt. Maybe it's felted wool. So I think we are skipping spring here in Arizona and going straight to summer. It might hit 100 degrees today. There are lots of memes about driving with hot pads because those cars do get warm. Okay, I'm going to stand up, go off camera for just a second to grab my pressing mat. Okay, I was able to do that without too much trouble. Just juggle some stuff around here. Okay, I've got this cute little Odyssey iron, I'm sure. Goodies. Wait for it to heat up for a second. Oh my goodness, freeze warnings in Atlanta. What a difference it makes. In the different regions of our country. Variety. Gotta love it. And I have a friend who, or acquaintance really, who tends to spend all summer complaining about the heat. And yes, I know there are extenuating circumstances, you know, if your husband's job is here and you know, he's committed to that or whatever family reasons. But it's a free country. You can pick up and move somewhere. So if this is where you are for a while, then accept it and don't complain too much. I don't know. I just it strikes me as funny that people will spend their time complaining about things when they have the freedom to make a different choice. But okay, so I'm going to turn these around so they are oriented the way the diagram in the instructions are, so that I can make sure I get my Cheerios on the other corner. So they're touching there. Whoops, can't be adjust that camera over just a bit. So my Cheerios fabric there is touching. And same process, even though we've got the triangles on, I can line up those original corners to find the center. And my creases. Yes, Karen is saying she was living in Southern California and it was so hot so much of the year. Yes, I agree. I tend to just stay indoors. I mean, I have fair skin. I'm a redhead. I burn really easily. So I do not go outside. Um, you know, we cover up with the rash guards in the pool, hats, big floppy hats. And Lori has nice seasons in Atlanta. And yeah, Karen's talking about the weather in Idaho. Snow flurries last week, and then today is sunny and 65. Yeah, Idaho. I did live for a year in Idaho. I was stationed at Mountain Home, and Colorado for a few years. And yeah, the weather can go up and down quite rapidly. Okay, and then the fourth side of our square is going to be the dark triangle. So let me grab those and we will put that on next. And the other block of the month sew along project that Cotton Cuts had last year that really pushed me over the edge and was my first purchase with them was the Floral States of America, which they've had major shipping issues with the fabrics they chose for that one, but they got them in and all of the packages are in transit now, I think, for the last 2 months. So I am super excited to put those together and do a compilation video there for the last 10 states, and then a piecing video, because I haven't decided. I can't remember, honestly, if I chose the straight layout or the on point layout. I honestly don't know, because I was kind of going to do my own thing. It's hard to make 50 blocks work out as a rectangle. Either they're really narrow, 5 across and 10 down, or you have to, you know, do something with the extra 2 because you've got, 6 by 8 is only 48, 7 by 7 is only 49. So, you get I'm wondering though if I don't particularly like square quilts. I'd rather have a rectangle. So maybe if I did the 7 by 7, but then put an extra row that only had Arizona, because obviously that's my home state. And I'm sitting here contemplating, because Arizona is state 48, but that doesn't work, because then you have 49 and 50 if you were going to do a 48 state layout. So yeah, we'll see when it gets here and I have it all laid out. I can work on it then. Okay, here's step 1 and 2. We're getting those squares done. Just pay attention to your 4 corners are going to be different fabrics. And we are pressing out towards the triangles. Okay, so I can set those aside for a second. And we're going to, they sent me they did not send me the right pieces. See what I mean about checking your fabric before you start? I've got F. That's F. Oh no, yes they did. That's right. That's the I was thinking that I needed more of this rectangle. The rectangle, but that's A, and I need this E down here. It's all good. Cotton Cuts, you're doing great. Operator error. It's been a long week already, and it's only Wednesday. Okay, so we're going to use all 4 of these to make half square triangles. And we are going to, this is one of those instances where I have to press to the lighter fabric. So somewhere down the line, that's going to make it easier, but it sure goes against my grain to press to the light triangle. And I'm only pressing 3 of the 4 because I always leave, when I'm chain piecing, I leave something under the needle. Okay. Okay, so now I am making this unit with the tan square next to the tan triangle. And I like to sew these with the square on the bottom and the half square triangle on the top, and I can just watch and make sure that seam does not flip up. I've even got a handy dandy little poker. You could use a chopstick, some kind of stylus there to hold that fabric down as it goes under the needle. And then your seams stay going the way you want them to. So this is a fairly simple, quick clue for the small size of Flyway. And then we're going to take these other 2 and sew them to the larger rectangles. I'm doing the steps out of order here just because it will work for my, oh, I can do it in the right order. I was going to say so that it works for my chain piecing. Again, we're pressing towards the tan. And then this unit, let's see, B is my Cheerios, so that stays to the right. And then this is going to be on that side. And the trick here to keep that point is to put this square and a square unit on top as it's going under the needle. And you can kind of aim that point of the square right on the middle seam. And you can also put a pin. You're going to aim your needle right for where those seams cross. And if you put a pin right in there, it should go through the seam on your other unit as well. So that's how I'm going to pin that together. And aiming right for that intersection. Okay, so a close-up view. I am aiming right there, and I'm going to line that up with that tip with that seam. Okay, I need to catch up on comments. Hello, Jess. I so blessed by Jess is here, and she is a fourth grade teacher, and she is having a science fair this week, I guess, right? I saw your video of your student projects. They looked awesome. Congratulations. And Karen thinks that it would be too much pressure to be on camera. I don't know. You guys are all friends. Yep, just talking. You notice I shut up a little bit when I have to concentrate on those seam lines. Okay, now we're back to the easy stuff because I am just sewing the square on the rectangle. Okay, and matching up. Let's see. I did pretty good there. My seam line is just a hair off from the tip of my other square, but I didn't lose the point, so I'm happy about that. I'll take two things here. I need to, and you notice it's against my nature. I say that every single time. There's some part of the block where it presses the way I think is wrong. This one we're pressing towards the square in a square, and that just, I would rather have that press out to these edges, but you know, anywhere those seams together, I want to press away from that. But that's not the way they're telling me to do it, and I follow directions. This one we're pressing towards the rectangle. So. And this little triangle buddy goes in the corner. I'm hearing a weird noise. I'll just trust that the cat jumped up somewhere and it's not a burglar. Oops. And there I'm getting a phone call. So hang on a second. I'm going to uninvite the there we go. Remove. Okay. Excuse me for just a second while I check on that missed phone call. Oh. My husband was checking in and he usually doesn't do that. So while we're waiting here, I've got a couple other fun quilting summits coming up. One is general design from a variety of craft perspectives, and that is called The Sweet Life of a Designer, and I'm happy to pass along the sign-up link for that. And then the other one is, sorry, I'm getting an echo. The other one is called A Quilter's Life, and Dara Thomason is hosting that one. I'm presenting at the Design Summit, but I am not a part of Dara's. I'm just going to attend and soak up as much quilting fun as I can. So if you'd like more information about any of those, be sure to get on my email list because I share all the details and sign up links there. So let's continue on. I need to move that over just a hair so that that's right on the stitches. And same thing, I can aim for that intersection as I'm sewing. I just thought of the answer to my husband's question. Okay. I always worry, you know, it's the mom thing. Even though my daughter is quite capable, I just get worried when I get a phone call I'm not expecting. And my mother-in-law is elderly, and so she called me a couple times today with various things. She says I guess I'm the first. Well, Andy, of course, is first in her phone book, and she was reprogramming all of her numbers in her car, and so she called me like 3 times in a row. But yeah, it was funny. It really funny with cell phones how the billing plans change, and you used to only have a certain number of text messages you could send in a month. We never got close to the limit because all my husband and I would ever text each other was that we're on the way home. Need anything from the grocery store? And then by the time my daughter had a cell phone, they had gone to all the unlimited plans, and that was much nicer too. I mean, when I was a kid, you had to pay for long distance phone calls. some little leftover triangles from another project that I am going to sew together into quarter square hourglass units as my leader enders instead of that scrap tab of fabric. Ooh, that one just kind of went under the needle funky and I've got a big mess, but since this is just a little scrap project, that boo-boo will get hidden in the seam. And then this is going towards okay, and there is clue 3 of, whoops, I'm thinking I'm still showing you on my other camera. That is clue 3 of Flyway. So you can see the nice arrows are going to be some kind of migration element. And Renee is joining us from Kentucky. Yes, we need the weather report. And here is the second one. So I'm a little bit off on my edges there, but I was making sure that I didn't lose my point right there, that was lined up with the seam. So, you know, give and take there a little bit. I'm not too worried at all. Work out in the end. Yes, we were making 2 of the same unit for the clue 3. And this is the small, so the large size design might have some extra units. But yeah, for clue 3, we made 2 identical blocks. And I mean, I think this is going to be really cool. And I love this neutral palette with these creams and the graphic prints on the fabric. Good job, Cotton Cuts, with these color families, these fabric lines. Okay, so that is clue 3. I like to stay organized, so I had some extra fabric. I will just keep that for the end or some other project, or I could even use that as the label when I am done. And that goes back into the bag that says clue 3. And that bag and my color chart go back in the box that I have labeled Flyway, so that I can try to keep the chaos to a minimum here in my sewing room. I am going on a retreat this weekend, so I always overpack. And, you know, you think when you have multiple days of sewing that you're just going to crank through and get all these projects done. So I'm starting to think I've got 2 projects here. I've got this is my 9-patch and snowball quilt that I've got all the blocks pretty much done for that. And then I've got some fun curved units, Drunkard's Path blocks, for a quilt called Hexabore. That was a class that I took last year with Jenny Haynes. And so there's 2 projects I want to work on. And yes, Karen asked, is there time for letters? So that is my Abyss Cherrywood Fabrics Challenge. And let's see. I've got RU. I finished piecing the word still. And then I've got a W and another R in a different color. So let me see what I printed out and put some things to the side and figure out. Okay, so paper piecing. I'm going to turn that iron off because it is a little too warm in this little space. Okay. I'm just going to grab the colors I need. I need this pretty green and this kind of darker teal. They all, I mean, it's a gradient. So if you look back to last week's, was it last week or the week before? I know I've done several WIP Wednesdays with this paper piecing project. And to get started, I need to cut out my foundation. I just print my patterns, my paper piecing patterns on regular computer paper. And let's see. Then I am going to shade in my dark section so that I am sure to have the right fabrics in the right place. And I'm going to pre-fold my pattern. And these are tiny. These are only 3-inch letters. So I'm going on all of my stitching lines and I am folding the paper so that when I start placing the fabric, I can. That's one less hassle. The paper knows where it wants to go. Okay. I think we're good. So to get started, step one is always a little more. That's my selvage edge. Let me cut that off because I don't want to get confused with that. And there's just the faintest line that's different on these hand dyes for the selvage edge, but it's very stiff. So you do the stretch test, and then I am making sure that I've got a big enough piece to cover that section 1. And then the paper, you put the wrong side of the paper against the wrong side of the fabric, and I'm making sure that I've got plenty of seam allowance. And then I put a pin away from the sewing line that I'm going to be using. No, that's what. And then I pull out my add a quarter. This is the key tool for paper piecing. And then I fold on the line again. I just fold the paper back so that I can see the fabric that I just put in place. I put my ruler right up against that folded paper. And I come over here and stretch around to where my rotary cutter was because I wasn't planning on doing this. And then you trim away any excess fabric. And then that gives you, once you put the paper flat, that tells you where to line up your second piece of fabric. So I line up that fabric. Then I shorten my stitch length. Put everything under the needle. Whoops, it would help if I had my needle up. And line that up so I can sew right down that line. Oh, no caps. Are you still wrong? No, you need to wait, Karen. I've tricked you. I haven't given you all the information. Hello, Deb. Thank you so much for joining us. And I missed someone coming in. I know this is such an awkward time, but I get off work a little bit early, so I want to get my sewing time in before dinner, before the family gets home. Hello, Terry. And you have the flamingo. That's the bright pinks, if I remember right, for the flamingo colorway for the Puzzle Mystery Quilt. And I finished my clue, so now I am working on my paper pieced letters. And Karen is having lots of fun guessing what we're doing, but this is where I need my little tabs of leader ender fabric. And there, if you can barely make out that shading, that's the letter I'm working on here. Okay, and then we press our fabric out of the way and repeat the steps. We fold paper, trim, add the next piece. It's not laying flat while I add the next piece. Add a piece and sew. I think I'm going to make a t-shirt for FPP fans with that. F-TAPS is the acronym I use. Fold, trim, add a piece. That's your AP, and then S is sew. Are you still wrapping? No. Remember, it has to have a sea, ocean, water theme. We're in the abyss. Okay, and now I need a big, long piece of and all the sports I like are done. The March Madness is over. I could not believe the wild endings to the last two games. Duke was ahead for most of the second half, and they lost in the last few seconds. Houston was ahead for the second half, and they lost in the last 10 seconds. I just couldn't believe it. Made for a very exciting game, except that I wanted Duke and then Houston to win. So I was on the losing end of that. But And now we watch soccer occasionally, but there really isn't that much sports ball in the summer that I watch, unless there's an event like World Cup or Olympics or something. I'm very much a fair weather fan. I like the excitement of the big championship type things like Super Bowl. I watch football during the playoffs. I don't pay much attention during the regular season. Basketball for the tournament. Okay. So here are my little letter. Oh no, that was bad. Okay. My pattern is up here, and the fabric is down. See, up here is where my finger is where the fabric needs to end. And I didn't position that very well. So when I make a mistake on paper piecing, I go in between the fabric. I could, on this side, I could rip out the stitches on the fabric side, but they're so close because I shorten my stitch length that I find it easier, even though it's a bit slower. I just go in between the fabrics and go under the stitches there to rip out, and that protects the paper a little bit. If you had to do the same seam more than once, it would probably be better to just print a new pattern. But luckily, I tend to only make one mistake at a time, and then I'm good for a little while, and then we can move on. So I didn't have to rip anything out on my Flyway clue. So I just got talking and not double checking my fabric placement. Okay, so I need to come, and the trick is because the piece I'm adding is longer than the piece that's already there. So that's where I made my mistake. I need to pay attention to the pattern and not the fabric that is already in place. Might just yeah, we're not going to have any seam allowance down there. Let me cut a longer piece of fabric, and that will solve my problem. That's the thing about paper piecing, is that it's a little bit wasteful. You want oversized pieces that you can trim down to the exact, because they'll cover the exact amount that may be very tiny. And this process has been much easier than the first time I did tiny paper piecing. I took a class from, what was her name? Cynthia somebody. She does beautiful landscape paper pieced projects, but she wanted you to cut each tiny piece with its seam allowance and then put it in place. And I'd much rather use a huge piece of fabric and then cut it down. So just that's the way I make the process a little easier. Okay, and since I didn't use a leader ender, I've got thread tails to match up or hold on to. We go right over that spot we already sewed. And then I will remember to use my fabric leader ender. Okay, much better, much better. Okay, and that's, well, I need that for next. Okay, so it looks pretty funky, but we're going to fill in with fabric right there. Right now. And I am picking out a couple of the stitches where they went over into the next sewing zone. Line up the next piece of fabric. I made it nice and big, hanging over the edge of the paper. I told you I'm going on a retreat this weekend, and they have so much fun. Several rounds of left, right, center each day. So gotta make sure I have my I think we're playing for dollars cash there and not fabric. I've done it both ways. Couple background pieces, and we will have the next letter for Karen. So get your thinking cap on, Karen. Just a minute, you should have enough information. Trying to get just one layer of fabric here to do my next half. And someone, oops, yes, someone posted online that asking about the submission process, and I was like, oh my gosh, people are already done with their challenge quilt already. Yikes. There are some people that plan ahead, and then there are people like me who would never get anything done if it weren't for the last minute. This. I'm putting a word together for you, Karen, so get ready. I'm gonna trim this one down and then piece the word together, and then we will have a big reveal. So there's my second word. Where'd my first one go? Oh, come on. Oh, it was just here. You guys, what did I do with it? I showed it to you earlier. What the heck? This is the mess that is my mind. Anyway, you can see a little bit of the paper here on the E, but that is going to be in the seam allowance, and I have enough to catch that, so I decided not to redo that. But I finished, and of course I need to press that out flat, and it will be straight in the finished quilt. So this was, I needed to figure out, this is about 9.5 inches across, and the quilt is 20 by 20. So I have to figure out the spacing of the words, because I'm going to have 4 words down the quilt, and then just the spacing back and forth. And then I plan to do some ripply quilting across that. So it'll be a nice modern, oh, here we go. It just had fallen a little bit. So there was the first word. And there's the second word. And so it'll be the gradient of fabrics down the, and the colors aren't coming through on this camera, but this background, turquoise, is a little bit lighter than the background of the water, and it's going to get to the darker shades as you go down the quilt. So I'm having fun with it. I don't expect to win anything, but it's, you know, a lot of times when you enter challenges, it's just for personal growth. You know, you want to see if you can make your vision come to life. So that's going to be fun. Yes, Karen, the colors are getting deeper. And I'm hoping to find, I need to ask my mom if she has any decorative yarn, because I remember about 20 years ago, she had a fabric and yarn shop, and there was this novelty yarn that was like little tiny ladders, and it had like, it was variegated. So it would have a solid color as the bars on the side, and then little pops of colors were like the rungs of the ladder on the yarn. And I seem to remember she had something teal-ish. So I'll have to go raid her yarn closet and see if I can find some fun yarns as couching, you know, kind of those fern plants and, you know, seaweed and things to embellish my abyss piece. So that's all for this week. I hope you tune in next week. I'll have lots of fun stories for you from my adventures on my quilting retreat. Thanks for the motivation, Karen, to get another word done on my challenge. And we got the Flyway Clue 3 done. Hop around to the various Cotton Cuts ambassadors, because we are closing in on the Wild West reveal at the end of April. So it's going to be lots and lots of fun to wrap that project up as well. So thank you all for being here. Have a great weekend.